What if the reason we never hear a bad word about Keanu Reeves isn't just because he's a nice guy? What if it's because he's legally forbidden from speaking? Behind the millions in charity and the quiet life lies the Final Gag Order, a document that might explain his most controversial legal moves and a secret Hollywood has kept for 30 years. To the world, Keanu Reeves is the ultimate anomaly in a town built on ego, vanity, and betrayal. While other A-list stars are constantly caught up in messy public divorces, bitter feuds with directors, or leaked audio tapes showing their worst behavior, Keanu remains completely untouched. He is the secular saint of the internet, famous for giving up his seats on public subways, buying expensive Harley-Davidson motorcycles for his stunt crews, and quietly donating tens of millions of dollars to children's hospitals without ever putting his name on the buildings. But in a town where reputation is a commodity and secrets are weaponized, is it really possible for someone to be this perfect? Or is there a highly calculated, legally enforced structure that ensures the myth of the nice guy is never compromised? This question has taken on a sudden, urgent relevance because of a highly unusual and controversial legal move that Keanu recently made, one that has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. For decades, Keanu has maintained almost religious boundaries of privacy. He does not use social media, he rarely gives personal interviews, and he keeps his circle incredibly small. But just recently, his private legal shield cracked when he submitted a formal, personal letter to a federal judge in Manhattan. He was begging for leniency and mercy on behalf of Carl Rinch, a director who was just convicted of defrauding Netflix out of $11 million. Rinch's crime was not some minor oversight. It was an absolute Hollywood scandal. Netflix had handed him millions of dollars to create an ambitious sci-fi epic called White Horse. Instead of delivering a show, Rinch allegedly transferred the money to his personal bank accounts, went on a lavish spending spree that included buying a Ferrari, multiple Rolls-Royces, a $439,000 handmade Swedish mattress, and then lost millions more speculating on high-risk stocks and cryptocurrency investments. The show was never made, Netflix was left with nothing, and the federal government stepped in. Yet out of nowhere, Keanu Reeves, the man whose reputation is worth gold, stepped forward to write a glowing, protective letter to the sentencing judge, pleading for a light sentence for a convicted fraudster. Why would Hollywood's most beloved actor risk his immaculate public standing for someone who had committed such a massive, high-profile breach of trust? But here is where the story takes a chilling turn. This isn't the first time Keanu's legal team has stepped into the shadows to protect a narrative. In fact, if you dig into the archives of his contract negotiations from 30 years ago, you find something Hollywood has tried to scrub from the internet. A highly confidential clause that doesn't just protect Keanu's privacy, it legally binds him to a system of absolute silence, under penalty of forfeiting everything he has ever built. To understand the legal gravity of Keanu's relationship with Carl Rinch, we must travel back to 2013, to the set of the film 47 Ronin. This movie was intended to be a massive blockbuster, but it quickly devolved into one of the most chaotic, expensive disasters in cinematic history, costing Universal Pictures over $150 million in losses. The studio reportedly locked Rinch out of his own editing room and took complete creative control of the film. In a typical Hollywood scenario, a director who costs a studio that much money is permanently blacklisted, and the lead actor distances themselves immediately to protect their career. But Keanu did not do that. He stayed fiercely, quietly loyal to Rinch, attending his wedding in Uruguay a year later and maintaining a close relationship. Why? Because during the chaotic fallout of 47 Ronin, the legal teams representing the actors, director, and studio were forced to sign what industry insiders call mutual protection covenants. Under these agreements, neither the director nor the star could speak publicly about what really happened on that disastrous set. It was a binding web of silence where both parties held keys to secrets that could destroy each other's careers. This brings us to the concept of the reverse gag order. In the vast majority of Hollywood scandals, non-disclosure agreements are used by powerful executives or wealthy stars to pay off victims and keep their own bad behavior quiet. It is a one-way street of enforced silence designed to protect the abuser. But in Keanu's case, we are looking at a highly sophisticated, reciprocal legal arrangement. This is a system where the star agrees to absolute, lifelong silence regarding the internal financial structures, casting couches, and creative manipulation of the studios in exchange for absolute protection of their own personal life. If you examine the timeline of Keanu's career, this legal structure began to solidify during his most difficult years. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Keanu experienced an almost unimaginable series of personal tragedies. His sister was diagnosed with leukemia, his daughter Ava was stillborn, and just 18 months later, his partner Jennifer Syme was killed in a tragic car accident. During this period, Keanu was at the absolute peak of his fame, starring in the culture-defining Matrix trilogy. He was surrounded by a ravenous media eager to exploit his grief and turn his personal suffering into tabloid headlines. It was during this exact window that Keanu's relationship with the Hollywood studio system underwent a fundamental transformation. He did not break down in public. He did not write a tell-all book. Instead, his legal team established an impenetrable barrier. The studios, desperate to keep their multi-billion-dollar franchise star stable and focused, co-signed this wall of silence. But this protection came with a steep price. The contract clauses signed during the production of the Matrix sequels were some of the most restrictive in Hollywood history. They went far beyond standard privacy clauses. They dictated that Keanu could never speak on the record about the chaotic, dangerous conditions on those action-heavy sets, nor could he ever publicly criticize the studio's executive decisions or financial structures. This legal binding explains one of the most famous, yet misunderstood, chapters of Keanu's career, the legendary story of him giving away his $75 million Matrix earnings. The popular narrative is that Keanu, in an act of pure, selfless generosity, gave his back-and-profit share to the special effects and costume design crews because he felt they were the real heroes of the films. It is a beautiful story that cemented his reputation as the ultimate nice guy. But if you look at the cold, hard legal reality of Hollywood accounting, the story becomes far more complex. In major studio productions, profit sharing is governed by incredibly strict, legally binding contracts. An actor cannot simply hand over $75 million in studio-controlled funds directly to crew members without triggering massive tax liabilities, union disputes, and corporate audits. Many industry analysts believe that this massive transfer of wealth was actually part of a highly complex, studio-sanctioned legal restructuring. By routing these funds directly to the crew, the studio avoided massive tax burdens, and more importantly, it ensured that the hundreds of crew members who worked on those highly secretive, technically grueling sets signed their own strict non-disclosure agreements. Keanu's generosity acted as the perfect, beautiful carrot, while the studio's legal team wielded the stick. Keanu was the face of the transaction, but the ultimate goal was total, absolute silence. Now, fast forward back to the present day, to the federal courtroom in Manhattan where Carl Rinch is awaiting sentencing. When Keanu wrote his letter to the judge, he was not just helping an old friend. He was navigating the razor-thin margins of his own legally enforced boundaries. In his letter, Keanu used highly specific, almost clinical language. He wrote that Rinch has a kind of self-destructive tendency in which he greatly inflates the scale and scope of a contracted project and ultimately ends up in conflict with the other party. He carefully noted that he had no intention of downplaying what Rinch did or justifying the crime, but instead wanted to offer psychological insight. This is not the writing of a casual friend sending a quick note of support. This is a highly calculated, legally vetted document. Keanu and his lawyers knew that every single word in that letter would be parsed by federal prosecutors and media outlets around the world. By framing Rinch's massive $11 million fraud as a psychological tendency to self-sabotage rather than malicious greed, Keanu was attempting to shift the narrative without violating any of his own binding agreements with Netflix or other major studios. He had to be incredibly careful. If he said too much about the chaotic inner workings of Hollywood production funding, or if he implied that studios routinely ignore financial red flags until it is too late, he could be sued for breach of contract. He was walking a legal tightrope, trying to save his friend while keeping his own gag order completely intact. To understand how Keanu navigates this legally restricted reality, we have to look at his actions as a series of quiet chess moves. When you are bound by strict non-disclosure covenants, you cannot make loud, sweeping statements on social media or release emotional press releases. Instead, you must operate entirely within the margins of the legal system. The submission of a character reference letter in a federal court is one of the very few ways a public figure can influence a situation without triggering a breach of contract claim from a studio. By speaking directly to a federal judge under the protection of judicial proceedings, Keanu's words are shielded from standard civil litigation. It is a masterclass in legal navigation, showing that while Keanu may be a nice guy, His legal team consists of some of the most brilliant strategic minds in the industry. They know exactly how to leverage the system to protect their interests while keeping the public-facing myth completely untarnished. This pattern of calculated silence and selective, strategic intervention is visible throughout Keanu's entire life. Consider how he reacted during the massive industry-wide reckoning of the MeToo movement. While almost every other major figure in Hollywood was releasing public statements, taking sides, or being forced to answer uncomfortable questions about the systemic abuse in the industry, Keanu remained completely, surgically silent. He did not release hollow public relations statements, nor did he join any public crusades. He simply kept his head down and kept working. To his fans, this was seen as a sign of his quiet dignity and respect. But to legal experts who study Hollywood contracts, it was a clear demonstration of a man who knows exactly what he is legally permitted to say. Under the terms of his long-standing studio agreements, speaking out about the industry's systemic failures, even in a supportive way, could open him up to intense legal scrutiny and potential contract termination. The same pattern emerged during the highly controversial production of the John Wick franchise. These films are famous for their incredibly dangerous, high-impact stunt work. Keanu, who performs a massive percentage of his own stunts, has suffered numerous injuries on set, including fractured bones and severe physical exhaustion. Yet, you will never find a single interview where Keanu complains about the lack of safety protocols, the grueling hours, or the intense pressure put on the cast and crew. He always speaks in glowing, highly controlled terms about the creative process. This isn't just because he has an incredible work ethic. It is because his contracts are designed to ensure that the physical reality of these high-stakes productions is never exposed to the public. The illusion of the effortless, ageless action hero must be preserved at all costs, and the legal penalties for breaking that illusion are catastrophic. This is the nice guy paradox. The very traits that make Keanu Reeves so beloved, his quiet nature, his refusal to engage in Hollywood drama, his absolute secrecy about his personal life, and his sudden, quiet acts of massive generosity, are the exact same traits required to survive under a lifetime gag order. By being the perfect gentleman, Keanu has successfully navigated a system that has destroyed countless other stars. He has turned his legally mandated silence into his greatest public asset. He has made us fall in love with his quietness, never realizing that his silence is a shield designed to protect both him and the multi-billion-dollar industry that controls him. When we look at Keanu's recent letter for Carl Rinch, we aren't just seeing a nice guy doing a favor for a friend. We are seeing a rare, fleeting glimpse of the massive, hidden legal machinery that governs every aspect of Hollywood. We are seeing a man who has spent 30 years perfecting the art of saying nothing, suddenly forced to use his carefully protected voice to plead for mercy in a federal court. It is a crack in the pristine facade, a moment where the legal reality of Hollywood's most protected star briefly collides with the public myth. In the end, Keanu Reeves remains an enigma, but perhaps the true secret to his survival is that he understood the rules of the game long before anyone else. He knew that in Hollywood, your words are the most dangerous weapon you possess, and that sometimes the only way to keep your soul is to sign away your right to speak. If you want to understand how deep these Hollywood silence pacts actually go, and the shocking truth behind why other major stars suddenly vanish from the spotlight, you need to watch our deep dive into the industry's most protected legal secrets right here.